Good morning. We're going to go ahead and call this meeting to order since everybody seems to be seated. We don't seem to have a lot of people straggling in. And we have a quorum in the committee. So we welcome you to the meeting of the Ad Hoc Committee on Spray Irrigation. And basically what we're here to do today is to continue our series of fact-finding missions. There seems to be some confusion about what we're doing and the order we're taking things in. What we decided to do at the beginning, or at the onset, was to hold a series of meetings and bring experts in before us and bring people who had actual working knowledge of the issues at hand with spray irrigation, spray waste irrigation. We're doing that. We've had some very knowledgeable speakers. We've taken tours of farms that have different spray or different irrigation methods for the handling of manure, and we are continuing to gather information. When we gather that information, we will do deliberations about what our final product or what our final report will be to the county board. We will do an outline of that. We will agree by consensus on an outline of that, and then we will proceed to write that report and debate that report as it goes along. We think we're getting the best information available, and today is a continuation of that. We have two speakers. We have Christy Greening and we have Gordon Stevenson. I will let each one of them give their credentials, but I want you to remember that this is their report to this committee. Their report to this committee. You are invited as guests to hear what their report to us is. We will be asking questions of them. At the end of the program, we will ask for citizen comments, but we will ask those comments to be very brief and to the point of the report. Okay? So without further ado, well, let's see, we have one bit of housekeeping to do, and that is the approval of the minutes of the last meeting. They were in your packets. Motion by Hendler, second by Weichman to approve the minutes of the last meeting. Without objection, the minutes are approved. So now, without further ado, the first presenter will be Christy Greening, and Christy will ask you to give your credentials and your background as you start your presentation.
Sure.
Please do.
Just turn it on here quick.
You think we could afford a PAC? Christy's a teacher.
For the committee sitting at the table, the presentation is obviously going to be behind you, so you may want to turn your seats and get comfortable. My name is Christy Greening, and I'm a member of the Protect Wood County group here in Wood County. As for credentials, I have been studying manure from cows for the last 3 years since the proposal was started on June of 2012. I am a public school teacher, so research and looking up information is nothing new to me. Speaking in front of public like this is a little bit different than speaking in front of my classroom. So that's my credentials. As I said, my name is Christy Greening, and I'm from the Protect Wood County group. I live in Saratoga on the 10-mile creek off of Highway 73. I would like to say thank you very much to the committee for allowing us to be here today and giving us your time and hearing our concerns. I was instructed that you folks wanted to hear a little bit more about our Protect Wood County group and how we came about, how this all started. So my first few slides are going to be exactly about that. We were formed as a result of the concerns when the proposed Golden Sands Dairy was announced to our area. That was on June 6th of 2012. Two men showed up at Heidi Gillespie's house. She is our Saratoga town clerk, with a binder of information and a cover letter for Lorelei Pure, who is our town building inspector, with the note to please pass it on. That same day, our Wood County Land and Conservation Department, along with Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources, received the same binder and the same amount of information announcing the proposed dairy. And Saratoga residents went to their mailbox that day and found a letter from the Wysocki group announcing again the proposal of the dairy. So in one day, we were hit with a bombshell in our local township. And shortly thereafter, of course, it hit the media. The next 2 months, the end of June, beginning of July, were a whirlwind of lawsuit threats and performances at the PAC, or the Professional Arts Center in Wisconsin Rapids, which really culminated in August. In August, the DNR let us know that we had 30 days. 30 days to decide what our concerns are, put them in a formal report, and ship them off to the DNR. That's a pretty impossible task when you think of the scale of the dairy that was being proposed. But over 100 citizens showed up at our Saratoga Town Hall. We separated into committees, and we got busy. And we did what we needed to do to supply our information for the EIR. After our initial research, we really focused on the local perspective of what this dairy would do. We realized that statewide advocacy was needed. Our current laws are not working. They're not working with us. And out of necessity to protect our own interests as citizens in Saratoga and the surrounding communities, we were forced to also monitor state legislation and the dirty deals that are happening down in Madison. And as a result, and obviously after becoming extremely educated, we have testified in front of DADCAP, which is the Department of Agriculture, Trade, and Consumer Protection. We have testified in front of the Senate and the National Resources Committee, and we have also testified in front of the Assembly at the Committee of Environmental and Forestry. And over the past 3 years, which has been just about 3 years, numerous relationships have been formed across the state where we share information and we share our resources. Initially, we were the group seeking out and taking from others desperately the information that we were trying to find. Now, we are one of the leading citizen groups in Wisconsin where people are contacting us all the time, looking for information and trying to become educated themselves on what's going on with these practices. Just this past summer, we were contacted by the Humane Society of the United States, and we provided a gathering and a tour for our state representative, who is from Madison, and the regional director from Tennessee that flew in to meet with us. We also did a gathering and a hosting for Lynn Henning. She is the 2010 Globeman Environmental Prize winner, and she came with a tour with Scott Henning from the Social Responsible Agriculture Project. I'm sorry, that was Scott Dye. So the main point I want to present here is a misconception that we are a small group in a small town fighting a big farm. And that is absolutely ridiculous. We have farmers in our group, and there's nothing small about us. Residents from all over the area, not just Saratoga, have voiced a variety of concerns regarding the proposed CAFO and the practice of liquid spray irrigation. The concerns range from local business owners concerned about their water quality to air concerns and the transmission of pathogens. The proposed dairy will affect home values and property values across the area. A 1996 Iowa study found that property values decreased by 40% when in the proximity of CAFOs and their fields. Homes in Saratoga right now that are for sale are not moving, and the ones that are have sold for $70,000 to $100,000 below the asking price. So what brings us here today? It's obviously to discuss concerns with the spray of liquid irrigation, and hence your committee. And there's three main goals that I would like to focus on, and I'm not sure why number one showed up next to all three. I made this slide. It may be that the angels up above are telling us that each one is of equal importance. I'm just not sure. But the three things that we are here, that I want to focus on, is for you to understand, for you to learn, and for you to hear. Understand our concerns with spray irrigation. Learn that liquid waste, what it consists of, and to hear and acknowledge our concerns. So going to our number one goal, understanding our concerns with spray irrigation. There's four main methods of waste disposal in this area. We have the knifing of the waste into the ground, the spray application from a tanker truck, the traveling gun, and the pivot irrigation system. Now, I would assume as members of the ad hoc committee, you are extremely versed in all these different types of manure application. So I'm going to make the next two slides really quick. One method of concern is the traveling gun. The traveling gun is a portable device that allows for waste application throughout the growing season. And under the right conditions, the operator can be successful using this type of device. However, the traveling gun does have a high-pressure end gun that shoots the liquid waste very large distances and very high in the air, as seen in the bottom picture on the left. The higher the stream of the waste, the more susceptible the liquid is to wind conditions and drift, resulting in contamination of the surrounding area. The use of the traveling gun does allow, however, an operator to get rid of massive amounts of waste in a very short period of time. Pivot irrigation is the next area of concern. These systems are cost-effective to farmers. It cuts down on road traffic. They are used to supply nutrients throughout the growing season, but they also have a host of concerns that go along with them. And mainly, again, it is the high-pressure end gun that you see pictured there. Shooting that liquid high into the air does make it susceptible to the wind and different weather conditions, and that drift carries for great distances. That drift eventually dries, and the dust particles are carried even further. Pictured here are drag lines. Drag lines are used to transport the liquid waste to the fields. They can be utilized in all four of the application methods, but specifically with the traveling gun and the pivot irrigation systems. During the growing season, these drag lines are a constant fixture along roadways and in the environment. They are on the perimeter of your homes, in the ditches, and through the irrigation pipes that go under driveways. Drag lines can be buried under the ground, as you see there on the bottom left, with a pipe that comes out at each field. But the main thing is that these drag lines cross whatever environmental obstacle is in their way. Driveways, creeks and streams, lakes and ditches. As you see right here, this is a drag line laying over a typical drain ditch or creek. And this is just a visual I want to show you also. This is from the Central Sands Dairy out in Armenia, and this is their drag line. As you see, this drag line goes for as far as the eye can see. If you go and drive around that area in the spring, in the summer, in the fall, you see drag lines along every single road. Go ahead. There's obviously concerns with drag lines. They're susceptible to both human and environmental elements. They are not typically rolled up in between use, so once they're pulled out, they are pretty much there 24 hours a day throughout the growing season. So when you consider the Township of Saratoga, we have counted, we have 127 homes that will be directly adjacent to a field that is listed as being sprayed with manure. 120 homes that possibly have that in their front yard. Would you want that in your front yard? So that gets to where does the waste come from and where does it go? The EPA report from 2005 estimates that livestock operations produce 10 to 20 times more manure than people, up to 1.3 billion tons of waste. We have to have our sewage treated. Livestock do not. Which leads us on to goal number 2, learning what is actually in it. Thanks. So from the barn floor to the crop field and everything in between. When people think of manure, they assume the industry is referring to the feces and the urine that simply come off the barn floor. And that's exactly what the industry wants you to believe. The reality is, what comes out of those irrigators is in no way simple liquid manure. It is not the manure that we would think of in the olden days. In fact, it is a toxic soup of semi-organic matter, chemicals, and heavy antibiotics. Depending on the size of the facility, the barn floors may be cleaned multiple times a day. Thanks. And so here you simply see 2 visuals of how they clean the floors. The first one is the flush method, where they simply take recycled wastewater, they shuffle it down the alley, and the feces and urine and chemical on the floor get dumped into a waiting tank. And the second one is simply a bulldozer bulldozing the waste down the alley. And eventually it lands in some type of floor system or some other type of holding facility. You know, every farm is different, all the different sizes, so it really kind of depends. But the main place it goes eventually is an anaerobic digester or an anaerobic lagoon. The major misconception from multiple people is that just barn manure goes into an anaerobic digester or an anaerobic lagoon, and that is false. The industry really banks on the general public and local officials, just like yourself, believing their rhetoric, that it's just manure. They want you to believe that when you put the manure into the lagoon or the digester, after so many days it comes out and it's pure and it's clean and it's not going to hurt anybody. And there is nothing further from the truth. Becky Larson, a member of the Manure Work Group and a UW-Madison individual, stated in a presentation on May 17th at the Public Research Symposium that nowhere in this process do we lose the manure. Manure goes into the digester and manure comes out of the digester. So lagoons and their digester contents, the big secret, what the industry doesn't want you to know. Regardless of what they want you to believe, on the manure floor is both feces, urine, and there's chemicals. It is not just manure. Many different types of chemical agents are used within the barn, and they are dumped into the digester along with everything else. From cleaning agents to disinfectants, antibiotic residue, and even pus and blood from infections from the animals. It all goes to the same place. It goes to the digester. Okay. Thank you. Pictured here is a foot bath. It's used for multiple purposes, from alleviating pain from an animal, helping with sores and cuts, and the simple cleanliness of the animal and its health. Foot baths contain at least 2 different types of disinfectants. Depending on the agents and the size of the foot bath, 100 to 250 animals can pass through that bath before it has to be dumped and cleaned and refilled. Where do you think those chemicals go? They go to the digester, right along with the manure and everything else. 2 commonly used ingredients are both copper sulfate and formalin. Formalin is a mixture of formaldehyde and water. You also have ammonium, zinc sulfate, zinc chloride, liquid hand soap, rock salt, and a whole list of many other chemicals that could possibly be in that foot bath. We have heard comments from the dairy industry stating that their cows use less antibiotics, they don't necessarily use these cleaning agents. And that may be the case when you're comparing it to a hog facility, but the bottom line is this: animals get sick. They go to the infirmary. In regards to dairy cows, they give birth, they get mastitis, they get antibiotics, and their waste goes to the same exact digester, the same exact lagoon that all the other animals do. And the real big part that they don't want you to know about, non-agricultural additional additives. 10% of a lagoon's digester's content can be non-agricultural additional additives. These are things such as slaughterhouse waste, which is the blood, the hair, the paunches, stomach, and intestine contents of an animal. All these things can be put in and eventually become land applied or irrigated through an irrigator. The farm is paid a tipping fee, which means the meat packaging plant or the rendering facility pays the farmer for them to dump their contents into their digester. So when you think of meat rendering plants, these are not animals that have low doses of antibiotics. These are animals filled with human growth hormone. They're filled with chemicals from the plant that they have come, and they definitely have antibiotics. And it's all going into the digester for the right price. Still don't believe me? I'll make it work. There it is. The proof is in the paperwork. What you see here is an actual DNR records obtained through the open records request of the Rosendale Dairy right here in Wisconsin, in Rosendale. This is a permit that approves the facility to accept additional additives into their digester. So if you look under the waste source listing right here, you'll see meat slaughtering operations and meat packaging operations. Go ahead to the next one. Thanks. Sandy Bay Mink Ranch is out of Michigan, Wisconsin. This was also received through an open records request. Sandy Bay Mink Ranch is another facility that accepts additional additives. Their paperwork states that they accept downed animals from the JBS and American Foods Corporations. So downed animals implies that these animals are sick. They have a virus, they have bacteria, they have antibiotics. Sandy Bay Mink Ranch slaughters these animals. The meat is used to feed their mink, or the meat is used to feed their mink, and everything else gets put into the digester. As you see right here, whoops. No, go back. Oh, you can't go back one. That's okay. The blood and punch is put into the digester. And even though we skipped a slide, I'm going to read what it says on the part 3, where it explains what goes into the digester. The punch stream is the contents of the cow's digestive system, which separated during the slaughtering process. The second stream is a sludge from a wastewater prevention system. This stream consists of punch, fogs, which is fats, oils, and grease, blood, and any other organic material. So what exactly are they going to do with that? They give the list of exactly what they're going to do with that material. The waste will be processed in an anaerobic digester with a retention time of 22 days. After digestion, the effluent will be processed through a screw press to separate the solids and the liquids. The liquid portion will be land applied, while the solids are sold for other beneficial uses. The liquid portion will be land applied. I wouldn't want that land applied around my house. The true atrocity of this situation is that the DNR does not keep a master list of what facilities are allowed to use additional additives in their digesters. You have to do an open records request on every single facility because they don't keep a master list of who's doing this practice. This slide here is just what comes out of the digester at the end. This is the solid portion. It's called a screw press. Liquid goes in one portion, solid comes out in the other. Farmers can put this back on their field, or they bag it in a bag and it goes to the store with the label inert. Liquid waste. At this point, the liquid left over is not called manure. It is called slurry. You can look up any DNR record and it is called slurry. They do not land apply manure. The slurry is eventually irrigated. At this point, it's held in a containment system. This is not the liquid gold of years gone by. No doubt that there is opposing arguments that not every facility adds additional additives to their digester, and that is absolutely true. Not every digester accepts additional additives. But here's the kicker. There is no law or disclaimer on the books that says they can't. The only thing they have to do is apply for the permit and list the contents they're going to put in. So myths about digesters in general. I'm just going to go through a few of them quickly here. Anaerobic digesters create a clean fertilizer alternative. That is false. I know Mark Borkhardt did a presentation for you folks here. He stated that 95% of the pathogens found in waste are found in the liquid portion. So that is the liquid portion that is going to be sprayed around homes out of irrigator systems you see here in the pictures on the wall. Anaerobic digesters kill 99% of pathogens, making digester byproducts safe. That is also false. Although digesters do change the components of what's in the waste, it does not guarantee that it reduces the pathogens enough to put it within the human threshold for safety. 1% of 100 is a lot different than 1% of 1 million. And we need to keep that in mind. And the last one I will quickly state here is that digesters block the release of toxic fumes, such as hydrogen sulfide and ammonia. That also is false. Hydrogen sulfide and ammonia remain in the digester and can be severe health risks to the community. The main purpose for an anaerobic digester is to capture energy from methane. Thank you. Wisconsin is known as a dairy state, but that is slowly changing. Numerous surrounding states are closing their doors to CAFO facilities and the massive amounts of waste that occur with them. And they are looking at Wisconsin. March 17th in 2014, the Wisconsin DNR, in combination with the pork and poultry industries, hosted a CAFO expansion meeting in those two production areas, poultry and pork. They are not here yet, but they are coming, and so is the toxic waste that comes with it. I read an article where there's 5 open permits for CAFOs in Wisconsin right now. I was able to find 2, both our Golden Sands Dairy here in Wood County and a hog facility in Bayfield. When we contacted the DNR, they actually corrected us, and they said there was many more than 5 that are presently awaiting permit. Unfortunately, I did not get that information from them prior to the presentation today. So now that you know what is actually in what people like to call liquid manure, you should obviously know why we are concerned. And so we're on to goal number 3, which is hearing and acknowledging those concerns. Our number 1 concern, obviously, is with the pathogens. Numerous research studies conducted have verified the types of pathogens found in liquid waste. All are present to some degree. Some can make you sick, some do not make you sick. But we have determined that those pathogens travel from the manure lagoon through the irrigator and are being aerolized around our homes. A 2010 study from the Center for Disease Control stated there were 150 known pathogens in liquid manure. Since that time, that number has increased to over 160. Thank you. Listed here are 4 of the significant pathogens found in manure. Giardia cryptosporidia, I apologize if my pronunciation is not correct, but they're water protozoa from livestock origin. They're found in animal manure, and they're not easily destroyed by filtration. Cryptosporidium causes gastrointestinal illness. It's contracted through drinking contaminated water and is resistant to conventional medical treatment. It can be fatal. And the last one, rotavirus, which is one of the most commonly recognized pathogens in manure. It can survive for long periods of time outside of its host, and studies have found that it can actually survive up to 6 months in manure containment facilities. On to pathogen transmission, and how exactly are we going to get those pathogens? There's 3 types of transmission. Fecal and oral transmission, meaning you have something on your hand, you put it in your mouth. Inhalation of the airborne contaminants, and drinking water or incidental water consumption, for example, if you're playing in the lake and the lake happens to be contaminated. And the side effects for pathogen transmission are listed on the side. Everything from chills and fever all the way down to death. So when one considers the pathogens that we're concerned about, the pathogens that are found in liquid waste, it is easy to understand why drift is our second area of concern and that we want to discuss. According again to Mark Workhart, who you have heard speak before, drift can contaminate our environment in 3 different ways. Fomites, which is surface area transmission, water transmission, and through our food. Any surface area that drift lands on can be a possible transmission site for these pathogens. Family homes run adjacent to fields run the highest risk of contamination through liquid waste irrigation. In Saratoga, again, 127 homes directly adjacent to fields where this irrigation of liquid waste would occur. And we have 500 within a quarter mile. Drift can drift that far. So you think about your children's toys out in the yard, your outdoor furniture, your cooking surfaces, all these places drift can land and be possible contamination sites. You may not see it, but it is there. I do want to bring attention, you will be getting a packet of information here later today, and in there you have about 2 to 3 pages of testimonial from individuals out in the Central Sands Dairy and around the New Chester Dairy in regards to how drift has impacted their life. So please make sure that you know those pages. Okay, next one. Thanks. So when we think of surface water contamination, we think of our classic definition of our creeks, our streams, our lakes, our rivers, which all definitely can be impacted due to drift. But drift does not have to land directly in our lakes and our streams to contaminate our lakes and streams. The drift can land in drainage ditches and any other tributaries that eventually lead to the bigger waterways. But take it one step further. We have unconventional water surfaces. Think of your grandchildren playing in the puddle outside, your dog's watering dish, or the home next door that has the swimming pool. Manure drift doesn't pick where it's going to land. It lands on everything. Pictured here simply is manure pooled on a corn crop. The same pathogens, chemicals, additional additives are found in that tiny little drop that are found in the big digester. It puts a little bit of more perspective on why you wash your food before you eat it. Our third topic of concern is surface water and groundwater quality. There has been a ton of controversy over liquid waste irrigation. It's exploding in the media due to the safety of the practice and the negative impacts it's causing in our environment. Spud Creek there shown on the left is in the Township of Armenia, right next to the Central Sands Dairy. That creek runs adjacent to and in between fields that are currently sprayed with liquid waste. Kewaunee County River on the right, that is a picture from last spring. They're in the news all the time for massive amounts of contamination for their water due to over-application, again, of liquid waste. So you think of our creeks, our drainage ditches, our lakes and our rivers, everything can be contaminated. So what do I mean by irrigation overspray? What we are showing here is a very common careless practice by the industry. The overspraying of fields across our roadways and into the trees. And you can see that in both of those pictures. Irrigation overspray is a leading cause of surface water contamination. These two pictures here are not showing irrigation of liquid waste. That is water and whatever pesticides or herbicides they may have added to that water. But you can see it's shooting over the road and it's shooting into the trees. I and others have been at these exact locations out at the Central Sands Dairy, and both of these fields are applied with liquid manure. They do not move that irrigation system. Once they're established, they stay put. So if they're spraying water over the road, what do you think is happening to the liquid waste? Other environmental impacts. This is a washout area observed on the north side Highway 73, just east of County Trunk U. It is less than 1 mile into the Portage County area. It is further documentation of environmental impacts due to spray irrigation. This also happens to be a field marked in the Golden Sands dairy proposal that would be sprayed with liquid manure. This washout here, even though you cannot see it into the picture, stretches a long distance and dumps into a drainage ditch alongside the field, which eventually those drainage ditches go to our creeks, our lakes, and our tributaries. This is just another picture of a concern with overspray. That is the drainage ditch filled with manure. That will go to our lakes and our streams. This map here shows the Township of Saratoga. And this is why we're so concerned with over-irrigation. This here is our 10-mile creek. That runs through our township. It dumps into the Wisconsin River and Lake Petenwell. This is our 7-mile creek that runs through and also dumps into Lake Petenwell. The darker shaded area there are all the proposed farm fields for the Golden Sands Dairy, with just about every one of them proposed to have liquid application of manure. In between here is the residential homes that are going to be affected. And if you don't know where you're located, this map up here shows every single address within a 5-mile radius of where this is going to happen. So please make sure you come up and check out our map later on. One area I did not have mentioned on here, inside this area is the headwaters of the Spring Branch Creek. And they feed the waters of our Tri-Lakes area in Rome. So every single area could possibly be affected. Where does it all end up? It ends up in the Wisconsin River. Phosphorus overload is already affecting our recreational area. And ABC World News Tonight came out a year or two ago already, documenting the blue-green algae with the expose called Lake Invaders. The blue-green algae in Lake Petenwell can be pictured from satellite. That's how horrible it is. We really want to be known for this. Surface water eventually leaks into our groundwater as well. An EPA study from 2005 reports that pathogens survive longer in groundwater than in surface water due to the cooler temperatures and the protection from the sun. Kewaunee County faces massive amounts of groundwater contamination due to the over-application of liquid waste. Headlines regarding illness come from this area all the time. The most latest one, November 14th of 2014, so just a few months ago, and the headlines read, 7 sickened by tainted wells. One of the quotes from that article read, one of the victims was a 4-month-old baby. I used well water to make her bottles, the mother said, and no odor or color to the water. There was no sign. We have pristine, clear water in this area of Wood County, and we would like to keep it that way. Of course, with all the other elevated contaminants, also comes a significant amount of nitrates and nitrate levels. I know that we have healthcare individuals here on our panel. I don't need to talk to you about nitrate levels with pregnant women and small children. That's very well documented. But additionally, ammonia comes out of those irrigators and lands on the soil. Ammonia from liquid waste will convert to nitrates, which add to the combination of nitrates going into our soils. Elevated drinking waters could close down businesses in the area. It could cause homeowners to be left without fresh water, and definitely affect all aspects, restaurants, hair salons, bars that use the K2 systems where you fill water with the mixture. It will affect everybody. The next area of concern is air quality. Air quality decreases around fields that have liquid waste. Waste contains ammonia, hydrogen sulfide, and toxic stench. A Hedrick study of 2007 coins toxic stench as a complex mixture of ammonia, hydrogen sulfide, carbon dioxide, as well as volatile and semi-volatile organic compounds. So depending on things like weather conditions and farming techniques, odors can be smelled from as much as 5 to 6 miles away, although 3 miles is more common distance, and that was from our State Environmental Resource Center from 2004. So again, when you look at this map up here, we map out where that 5-mile line is and how many homes can be affected by that stench. And of course, we are highly concerned about our children. The Center for Disease Control documents that 20 to 50% that children take in, 20 to 50% more air than adults, making them more susceptible to lung disease and health effects. That's a Cleveland study of 2000. Children have a greater number of rapid respirations per minute than adults. They also tend to mouth breathe, and they tend to be outside. They will have the greatest exposure to airborne toxins due to their size and their inability to toxify. Lung damage in children is irreversible. Yep, that's fine. I'll be done by then. No worries. Residents of Thief River Falls, Minnesota were evacuated on 2 separate occasions due to hydrogen sulfide emissions from the XL dairy. The standard for hydrogen sulfide emissions is 30 parts per million. Off-site, this facility was measuring at 600 parts per million. Countless residents had become sick from hydrogen sulfide poisoning. The reality is, here in Wisconsin, is very similar to Minnesota. Our Department of Natural Resources does not have the power to enforce compliance or administer consequences for blatant offenses. Their powers have been stripped. Protection of our local communities and governing bodies. The protection of our local communities is up to our governing bodies to protect us and be proactive for your citizens. It took over 5 years for this facility to be shut down. The cows are gone, the spraying has stopped, the lagoons continue to be full of waste because nobody has the power to make them emptied up. So even when there is no spraying or there is no fumes, you can still look at the air quality and be concerned. This is a picture I took myself at the Central Sands Dairy last May. That dust storm you see coming across the field didn't stop at the field line. It engulfed homes, it engulfed businesses, it engulfed everything in its path. And finally, our last concern today is for the vector, or the insect infestation. A Purdue study from 2007 states that residents closest to feeding operations and their fields experience a much higher rate of fly population than average homes. The Bowman study from 2000 states that there is a high potential for spreading bacteria to humans through flies landing on manure and then on their foods. So the bottom line is this. We are asking you once again to protect us from all the dangers that we have shown you here today. We ask that you enact the precautionary principle. The precautionary principle reads, when an activity raises threat of human health or the environment, precautionary measures should be taken even if some cause and effect relationships are not fully established scientifically. In this context, the proponent of the activity, rather than the public, should bear the burden of proof. The principle implies that you, as our governing body, have the social responsibility to protect the public from the exposure to harm and when scientific investigation has shown a plausible risk. I have a list here that I will supply you of all the research and documentation that went into this presentation. I have shown you the plausible risk. I have never, ever come across one single piece of scientific research that says spraying liquid waste around homes full of chemicals, full of pathogens, full of feces is healthy. Not one single piece of research. I have multiple I will show you that says it's not. Very last slide I'm going to let you read on your own. I get too emotional when I read this one. It's all yours. We're sacrificing our children, folks. That's it. Any questions? Yeah.
Bob, go ahead.
We all know who I am, where I fit in this situation. We had this first meeting in front of the county board, and it kind of upset me at the time. And so I talked to Bill Ackman after the meeting, and I said, I know where your people come from, Township of Saratoga. How beautiful you is. You're in a different area than I live. I said, I'll help you all I can, and but you have to leave the rest of us, the people alone, because our people in the northern end of the county haven't got these problems and all this. And somewhere or the other, he promised me he would go along with that, and then all of a sudden everything turned the other way. All of a sudden now the whole county is getting involved. I can sit here and I can draft ordinance all afternoon, and it happens like it did in Town of Miller, town meeting here last Monday night. The town chairman uses look at Manure, and he says to me, what are you people doing? Well, I says, we're talking about the manure system. He says, I get my nutrient management plan from the DNR, or from DNR. He says, I follow that according to my law. And if the county comes up with something that's different than that, he says, I'll take him to court, because I said, I know I'll win, that the county will beat the DNR, or the DNR will beat the county. And it gets me kind of scary on that, because when we had this presentation from the gentleman from the town of Adams County, he says, he can be challenged in the courts. So I got 70% of my county is in dairy industry to the north and the west of me, and I said, we have a lot of big farmers there, and we have a lot of money there. If this is going to get to the point it's going to the courts, is the county going to support it, or is the town of Saratoga going to fight it? And that's my question.
I have a question, sir. You came in here late.
Excuse me.
Oh,
Sir, this is not time for public comments yet. Thank you very much.
So I guess I want to clarify what your question is for me exactly. You want to know if we...
Well, what's going to happen with this thing proceeds? What's going to be the final outcome?
We don't know.
Well,
right.
we don't know.
Are we going to beat the DNR in court, or aren't we?
Well, that's not I mean.
That is the point.
We don't.
No, I'm not saying it's at the point, but I'm an attorney, I'm not a lawyer,
I can answer that question. We haven't come to a conclusion yet, so we don't know where we're going. We don't know if we're going to come up with something that's going to work.
Well, and one of the things I do want to address is we are not saying you can't spread manure. Even liquid manure through a tanker system or a knifing system. We are looking at the two things that I had up on the board that you weren't looking at.
Do any of the committee members have any other questions? Bob, do you have any, excuse me, Bill, do you have any questions?
I wanted to ask Christy, I know you're a member of the manure work group. Because of your job duties, you aren't always able to attend. But I understand in a month or two's time, they make some recommendations. Can you tell us a little bit
Sure.
about that group?
Yeah, the Wisconsin Manure Work Group, I am just a citizen that goes, my husband or I go, we have been to every manure work group meeting. They are drafting their announcement. I wouldn't hold my breath for that announcement. They're going through the motions. It is very vague. It is only an announcement in regards to best practice recommendations for this type of irrigation. The manure work group was not allowed to look at or investigate if spray irrigation was safe, if it was healthy. They are to come up with best practice recommendations. So for example, they spent 15 minutes debating on best practice when you are using liquid manure. Is it to have it 6 inches off the crop, or is it to have it 10 inches off the crop? They're not looking at is it safe, how it's affecting the environment. They're looking at best practice. What should the wind speed be if you are going to use this process? And there will be no legal teeth to it whatsoever. It could be put on a shelf and ignored. So I would not hold my breath waiting for any enlightening information.
Mr. Chairman, can I follow up? Okay, so who authorized them to make the study then? Was that Wisconsin DNR? Seeing they're not allowed to make a recommendation?
That's not what they're charged to do. Who exactly started the study, how it exactly came about, I know it had started one time and it had gotten stopped because there was not open records issues going on with it. So how it originally came about, I am not sure. But I know $300,000 was put into it for the study, and that has been said numerous times from the group, this is not enough, this is very surface level, and that more research needs to be done.
Thank you.
Mr. Hamler, any questions?
You know, this is a very volatile issue, but, you know, I accepted to serve on this committee and I think when we started here, we had a particular mission in mind, is to look at the pros and cons of this particular issue and make our recommendations to the entire county board. And up to this point, we have been listening to people who are informed about this particular problem. And I'm going to reserve my particular thoughts until we have, you know, made contact with all the people. I understand there's a problem, but in all my life, I've always been very patient about finding the facts before making a decision as to where I want to be. And in this particular case, we haven't heard of all the people yet, and I'm going to reserve my comments to the final meeting on this particular issue. But I thank you for giving us the other side of the issue that is sometimes not brought to light as it should be. But facts are facts, and I'll base my particular decision or my recommendation to this committee at that time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Rosar? Not this time. Bob, anything else, any follow-up? If not, with that, Christy, we acknowledge your concerns and we'll take them into consideration regarding deliberations. Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.